Good evening, guys. Ken of Tortoise Capital, Nightly Strategy Podcast, April 29th, 2024. We'll start with a 30-minute hybrid swing portfolio. So the yellow box here is the 1-day trading range. The red box is 5 days. So this was a 5-day high, for instance. All right, so here's our opening. And this is a really an emerging dragon continuation. Standard entry. This is the standard risk box of the R10. That's about 25 cents. It runs up, makes a new high of the day at about 2R, and everything's golden. It runs up to a 5-day high, then has an orderly sell-off. Could have been out here. I decided to just wait for the R10 to peak and to take the skin of the dragon exit, which gives us about that's about 4R. Check. So that's an orderly exit right at the 30 period PSAR. So that's a nice 3-day trend right there. That's a buy on dip opportunity, that little orderly pullback. So especially if it breaks above the 5-day high, this is an auto buy. But if it starts creeping up in here, I could be tempted to front run that. And then I would watch to see if it could actually break above this peak. We would want to see that early. And so if I'm trading that as part of the metals, I'm looking for SPY. I'd like to see the market look good. I'd like to see XME, metals and mining, looking good. And then I could compare Alcoa with CLF, with US Steel, and with Nucor Steel. And then if the S&P was good and metals was better, then I could pick which one of those four to trade. And that's almost the priority I would like to trade them in is Alcoa, long-term favorite. Cliff, because it's smaller and liquid and volatile, and US Steel because it's in play. And Nucor's been a stable alternate steel company. So that would be a way to use the radar screen to quickly zero in on a target. AI. This was an emerging dragon gap and go. So here was the close, here was the open. Entry ran all the way up to here. I waited probably too long and took it at the PSAR, or I'm sorry, the VWAP. So I preserved this much gain, but I gave back that much open risk, and that was more than an R, so that was pretty sloppy. And then it just kind of chopped, had a momentary sell-off and recovery. But that was not very efficient. It was disrespectful. Caterpillar, on the other hand, was a gap and go. Here was the close, here was the open. Breakout above the dragon, and then it just like a long train running. And then I took the standard exit here when it came back to the dragon for about 1R. That's like my favorite trade, when I can just get that transcontinental train just rolling with no overnight risk and respecting the PSAR. And we're north of the Bollinger Band mean, and the RL30 has turned, and we still have a good long distance to go to 365 before that train has to take on water in Chicago. So that's another $15. That's a 5% move. So we would love to see that. And we'll take it just little daily steps like that. Cliff, this was here was the close, here was a slight gap up. It ran up, closed here, opened and continued. So I bought the second bar of momentum, standard risk. It ran all the way up to here. Now, when it came back, the R10 had not peaked yet, but it was touching the VWAP and the Bollinger Band main and the edge of the dragon. So I didn't wait for the peak of the R10. I just basically no lose. And then it kind of petered out. So unlike Alcoa, which was strong, Cliff has been sideways and closed poorly. So in that whole lineup now of Alcoa, Cliff, US Steel, and Nucor, I prefer Alcoa, and CLF has a minus by it because it closed so poorly. Nothing compelling about that. But the downside trade is better. CVS. This was a emerging dragon continuation. Standard risk. Here's the peak of the R10. There's the skin of the dragon exit at the VWAP. 1R. Diamonds was a bit of a roller coaster today. So we had, here was the close. Here was the open, mucked around a little bit, took off, broke above the peak of the yesterday's R10. So that's an emerging dragon. So we're long from here. And there's our standard risk. It ran up. I stuck around too long. So this was a like minus 0.3. I let it slip away. Then it recovered, and I basically got the same entry as before, standard risk. This one was a minor gain, so this whole thing probably just was a net zero, and just wasn't much traction. Disney, this gapped up and started to roll over immediately. When it made a new low of the day, got short, standard risk. It mucked around sideways, showed no interest in gaining, so I just stayed with it because it was already in. And in the last hour, it gave me a little bonus of a couple R. Mostly out of just curiosity, I suppose. Devon Energy. Kata 2, this is a 1, 2, 3 entry. So when you have this kind of harsh sell-off to here, here's the low, and that bar opened here, sold off, closed here. Now it opens here, sells off, raises up. When this closes, then and only then can I determine if this was bar 1. It is, because it made a higher low. So that makes this one bar 2. And then in retrospect, it makes this bar 1. And now what I can do is place an entry right above the peak of bar 2. So bar 3 opens here, sells off a little bit, and then while it's live, makes a new high compared to bar 2. So I get long right there. I use the standard risk, and this thing runs up, comes all the way back to the skin of the dragon. So I take that exit. And this is about 0.5. So that's an example of like a, I think of that as a Kata 2 pattern, because you have this motion in an otherwise upward move. You have a little pullback and recovery. So this is also entering right as it crosses the dragon, and you combine that with the higher lows of a 1, 2, 3, and that is sort of a automatic entry for me. Excuse me. Emerging markets, emerging dragon entry at 11 this morning for about an R with a, after it rolls over at the R10, after it just made a new 5-day high, it slowly decays. And because I don't want to hold that overnight, I'll take the 1R gain. Ethereum was an early morning, had some strength. It ran all the way up to here, came back to here, ran back up, started to sell again, and I finally just decided to save 0.5. This was pretty inefficient. I gave back a lot of gains, but there was so much buying pressure that I wanted to see it go. But when it came back here and was close to the VWAP, I had to preserve 0.5. If you were trading the currency directly, there was a tradable move here. And I like that it closed positively north of the dragon. So I would like to see a tactical move in the morning. I'll be watching ETHE for that. Mexico, I was too slow getting out. This was a emerging dragon. Entered, ran up to here, sold off, and I stuck around too long, giving it a chance for minus 0.5. That was a stop and reverse. It made 0.5, so that whole thing just was horrible and escaped with my ride. Mexico, or I'm sorry, Brazil also caught a 2 and quiet grind for half an hour. Home Depot, quiet grind for half an hour. Intel, scratch midday. Was hoping to see a the fact that this has not failed any further, like there hasn't been any downward pressure after that horrible earnings. I was hoping to see maybe in the absence of selling pressure, maybe this would start to drift higher, but no, the buyers are too bruised. But I still will continue to play this in the future, believing that to be some kind of reasonable bottom being put in. IP was an emerging dragon. Here was the close. Here was the gap up opening, and showed strength, so we bought it. Second position at the 2R battle drill. Ran all the way up to here. Here's the peak. This thing comes down to the skin of the dragon. Exit there. So 2R on the first one, 1R on the second one, total of 4R. Well, 2R, the first one had 2R plus 1. So that's worth 3. That was worth 1. IYR. This gap up emerging dragon ran all the way up to here. I was inefficient, only preserved half an hour. I stopped and reversed, and then I was sloppy on getting out, so that whole thing scratches. I just did not play that one very well. Too eager for it to move. Coke, 1, 2, 3. So I treated that as a low, a higher low, a higher low. When this broke above that and the Bollinger Band mean and the dragon, I'm long with the standard risk. And it runs up. Here's where the R10 peaks, comes down to the skin of the dragon. That's where I exit for about 0.5R. Regional banks tried a series of 2 shorts. The first one was a scratch. The second one was a re-entry continuation on further weakness. And that one paid off too. McDonald's, no trade. 3M, no trade. I missed the short on that one. Merck was a collapsing dragon, and PSAR or a Bollinger Band mean collapse. And here's your PSAR flip, and it just was getting momentum to the downside, and everything was down, and the R30 had already rolled over. So hold my nose and get short, and then that one turned out to be a really nice trade. Here's the peak of the R10, exiting at the skin of the dragon, and that one returns about 2R. That one was surprisingly good. I did not expect that one. Microsoft was a collapse from the close, momentum short, and it returned an R after an initial weakness. It just kind of consolidated. I'd be looking for that one to make some gains tomorrow because it had a chance to fail in a big way today, and it did not. And if it shows strength tomorrow, this is going to look like a giant Kata 2. So if that holds and it breaks above, let's say 405, then that's a long. Marijuana, this was a nice one. Here was the close, here was the open. It rolled over and failed immediately. Short, standard risk, sold off. Here's your peak of the R10. Took the exit at the skin of the dragon. It continued to march north. When it crossed the Bollinger Band mean, I got long with the standard risk. It ran all the way up and came back. I exited here. It sold off and recovered, so I re-entered here at the same price I got out. And this ran up and came back, and I exited there. So this one returned 2, and this one gave us 2. So that's about 4 off of this afternoon series, and then another 1 here, so a total of about 5. And that's why MSOS is a favorite vehicle. It moves considerably during the day, and you can buy a lot of it at $9 a share. Nike, no trade. Nvidia, no trade. Choppy. Clean Energy, no trade. Palantir, no trade. Everything's sideways. Rivian was grinding north. This was an intraday recovery that I like, where gaps here, sells off, and then holds north of the dragon, and then reverses, and this gives you like a 1, 2, 3 right here. So long. It's on the north side of the VWAP, which is what we like. It takes off. Here's the peak, and it just decays right back to the edge of the dragon for 1R. That's just ringing the bell and getting paid. Cashing your paycheck. SOUN for half an hour the usual way. The S&P was choppy and sideways and quiet all day. A little bit of afternoon weakness, which immediately got rectified. I think this was just some traders jousting, doing some hand fighting there. Tesla was a great big gap, and so the good news there relative is continuing. It sold off a little bit and then resumed, made a new high of the day. So I got long with the standard risk, which is about $1. It peaked here. So we take the exit at the skin of the dragon for about 3R. And it closed pretty well. So there's more room. As long as it's under 200, that's a buying area. This is a buying zone right in here. Walmart was a poorly across the VWAP and the spine of the dragon. It was a 1, 2, 3 entry, standard risk. Really went nowhere, and it collapsed here in the late afternoon, and I was slow to get out. So that loses half an hour. US Steel, the slide continued, but I missed the short. XLI, however, was a nice little quiet trader to the upside. This was an emerging dragon. It had cleared all previous resistance, standard risk, returned an R with an exit at the north skin of the dragon. So I like that one. Some sniper trades of the day. Right, this is an opportunity trade here in DIA. It had been choppy, had a momentary sell-off, held support. The R10 reversed, came through the dragon, hit the PSAR. We still had a little ways to go to the VWAP, so I put a standard risk box on it, and I'm trying the long. If it gets north of here, then that would be good. So this is just tactical space inside here. Check or hold. Failed right away for fractional loss. Tried the Kata 2, same entry, same plan. This one paid off for about a half an hour and a half, 1.5. Kata 2 re-entry for about an hour. And then when the whole market started rolling over here and it crossed the Bollinger Band main, speculated short standard risk, sold off hard, came back, and I was able to preserve an additional one. So that made about 3 overall for the day. This one, I didn't have a lot of other things going on. So this one I tried. And this was that huge sell-off and then a rocket ship reversal. That's actually a 1, 2, 3 entry. So I just put the speculative risk on it. And it ran up here and came back. So I was happy to sneak out of there with one. When it resumed, I thought about this. I didn't take it, and it did that. So DIA had quite an eventful afternoon. This is Tesla. So this is after a great big gap up opening to here. And then it just kind of got choppy. When it broke out of this, after about 90 minutes, new high of the day and a PSAR flip, just slap the standard risk on it, which is about $2. That's about a 2R battle drill, a second position. Here's the peak of the R10. I take the exit at the skin of the dragon for about 3R. It reverses, makes a new high of the day. I tried that one, kept a fraction, tried another Kata 2, it scratched, and I felt like that was enough for the day. So we got about 3 out of that. And again, with no overnight risk. Traders today. Hamad, I thought he did a pretty nice job in here, getting long on that, pulling about 3.5R out of that leg. He wasn't satisfied with his performance in here, and so I think that left him hungry for more, and he ended up over trading in here. And this gave back minus 1.8, so he can only net 0.6. So we got to be able to draw that zero state boundary and just say that was then, this is now. No compelling reason to trade those. Peace of mind. There wasn't much room in here for in IP. The big gap suggests it could go, but it just did not have much follow through. The only one, I'd probably in another, where would say you're maybe over trading if you try that as a Kata 2. The only advantage is you got a PSAR flip, you're north of a rising VWAP, and it's not yet super quiet. So I don't know. Half the time that'll work. AI, this one, there's like an OR3, it doesn't work. I'd think hard on AI about stopping and reversing there instead of waiting for this one. That would have made that a winning trade and a winning day. And then this is, yeah, crossing. You got about as close to that crossing of the piece of VWAP as you could. Good scratch, good stop and reverse. Got paid a little bit. Stayed out of the chop pretty well. Gave it a chance. It didn't really pay off. This was, I thought that was well traded. The only improvement I see is in there. And the AI, it's so thinly traded and so volatile that after that gap up, you might be able to get that. Brian continues to march, pulls an R out of the Euro Aussie, and he's looking pretty good. Stays out of the chop. I really like the way the that dragon, that thick dragon line really shows you the turning points. You know, you get a clear downward move, chop, and then a continuation. When that breaks, there's your collapsing dragon, and then there's your P-star flip. There's the crossing of the Bollinger Band mean and continuation. So technically, could have gotten long in here. That's a great short. I'd have been tempted on a second position, and then you'd have to exit here at the skin of the dragon, which is the only way to improve on that trade, which you would have to do if you were aggressive and putting a second position in. You'd have to hit that exit right there. But still, we'll take an R. Let's see. George gets long. It runs all the way up. He preserves 0.1. There was a re-entry available. He didn't take it. Now, when this one rolls over, that that trigger right there, the skin of the dragon, if you had been long here, that's where you have to get out. That's the signal that tells you that upside move is over. That's also the aggressive short. And then this is the conservative short, and all of that pays off. Scratch on Cat, fractional loss on Devon, the re-entry. I'm going to start persuading you that this 1, 2, 3 is a great entry on a rising VWAP, a rising R10, a rising RL30, a rising Bollinger Band main. Dude, that's a signal. Couple scratches, not much there. Coca-Cola, the breakout may have been a little, delayed a little bit here. That would have been a perfect entry. That's still pretty good because it's clearing all of this junk. So that's an emerging dragon. Um, that's a reasonable exit. You gave it all of this time to break out. It did not. So cut it. That's good. Reasonable effort on a 1, 2, 3 upside. Yeah, you have to cut it there near the end of the day anyway. Yeah, nothing wrong with that. The only thing I might say is because this enters late in the day, you've only got about 4 bars for it to make a move. When it never got above here, I think I maybe now that's not much of an improvement, but it's really to respect the signal of the VWAP. Um, but as long as you're exiting north of 0.1 or 1.0, you're all right. So good work on all that. shift to the daily. Now, what I just want to highlight how I'm using the anchored VWAP. So this blue one is the 10-day anchored VWAP. You see, it's kind of established a base right here. That's the average or the anchored volume weighted average price. That's got a positive slope now, so it's been slight buying pressure. That means that this bottom of the dragon around 500, that's a pretty good support level right there now. And then the 5-day is this red one, and that's rising, and that's good, and it's north of the 10, so that's very good. And then the 3-day is this green one, and it starts here and does nothing but accelerate, and it's above the 5-day. So I see that now as the target is this 30 period. So that to me, 512 or 514 is the next upside move. And then if it breaks north of there, your next target is all the way back here, which is the all-time high. So I consider that to be evidence of a turnaround and, based on good volume. So I think that's healthy. We're in good shape there. Closed pretty well today. All right. Bullish volatile. Good recovery these last few days. Still risk off though, so we are cautiously optimistic. We've gotten back into overbought. Still bullish. The Dow Tactical. Goldman Sachs continuing to dominate. A little bit of strength here in Tesla is looking pretty good. Yeah, Tesla was so good today with that gap up that it made everything else pale in comparison. In the ETF, still a handful of auto framers. Japan, gold, NASDAQ, and S&P Tech. Had some strength here in the internationals, emerging markets, EAFE, and Asia less Japan. Brazil had strength, and Latin America. XLY's big move comes from Tesla, which is the biggest component of XLY. Reasonable number of auto framers available, a lot of tech in there. You got IBM, Intel, the tech sector, Microsoft, the Qs, Cisco, a lot to choose from in there. A ton of squeezes. So this bodes well for tomorrow because today was a healing day, a good day. You got things like mid caps and small caps, DIA, tech and materials, the Qs and SPY, EFA. That's very healthy. That is the absence of fear. So I'll be ready to pound that tomorrow. Ton of things have snuck back into the spring now on this last 2 or 3 days of recovery. Broad-based strength in the ETFs. And Goldman Sachs just crushing it. Caterpillar's sneaky good. Boeing making a little recovery here after long-term getting slaughtered. American Express in sympathy with Goldman. A lot to choose from. Trading values, got some new membership in the top three here now. Look at this. We got marijuana, Nvidia, and Intel has displaced Tesla, which has dropped to fifth place. Part of that is that the big upward gain in Tesla reverses the sell-off, so the fraud quality gets lower, but his intraday range is still really strong. So as long as he's in the top 10, it's a great trading vehicle. Caterpillar's there, Nucor Steel, Devon Energy, Intel, Nvidia, lots to choose from. This last couple days have been very healthy for the reversal in the RL10 Z-score. That's enough to make the RL30 bottom out right here. And that could be the start of this next move back to the all-time high. The RL90 Z-score has come back to reasonable levels. So this is just now strong bull, but not wildly oversold. So this could actually be a healthy continuation right here. That would be very strong. All right, we'll get this published and posted, and we'll be ready for them tomorrow. Take good care.